Thanks for joining me on another episode of Self Reflection Podcast. I hope that this conversation is going to reach you guys well today. But before we get into our conversation today, I want to hold space for everything that is going on in this world. Times are challenging in various ways from economical standpoint to social standpoint, right? So I want to hold space for that. And I also want to hold space for all the African countries that are going through some type of war, whatever it's civil war or other countries invading those countries. I want to hold space for all of those people because I see a lot of things on social media, and I think a lot of times African countries get left behind. And today I would love to acknowledge all those countries that are fighting for either their independence, right, or they're fighting to come out of the economical chokehold that they are all in today. And I want to recognize the resilience of those people in those lands that are fighting day in, day out to get out of the struggles that they're in, whether if it's from a political standpoint or a social standpoint as well. Let's get into our conversation today. Today, we are going to be talking about suicides. So, I want to say that if you are listening to this conversation, please be aware that you might get triggered. So, if you do get triggered by listening to this conversation, please turn the audio off or the video off and seek support, get help, right? I want to also ask if you know people that might benefit from this conversation, please go out and share this conversation with them. I think that bringing awareness to suicide is something that we need to bring in our society today because so many people are dying by suicide, right? I believe a statistic says that I am going to read some statistics today, but I believe that suicide is the second leading cause of death for young people in America, and that is alarming. And this is something that political parties are not talking about. This is something that people in the society are not talking about it, but why many young people are dying from suicide. And when you ask yourself, why are so many young people dying from suicide? If you listen to the next episode that we are going to release, I believe we are going to release this episode before our mental health episode comes out. So if you listen to that follow episode, you're going to see that at least 73 to 74 million young adults are struggling with their mental health, and only 97% of those people, young people that are struggling with their mental health, do not get mental health treatment or do not get support while they're struggling with their mental health. So for that reason, why when people are struggling with their mental health, for that reason, right, they end up committing suicide. We are going to get into the statistics here. When we look at statistics as of 2022, a data from CDC shows that suicide was the second leading cause of death in the United States for young people. And that is alarming, and it baffles me to see that the things that we focus on in society today, right? We talk about everything. We go through trends. We follow trends. People act out different type of trends, right? But yet we don't talk about the one thing that is killing many young people in our society today, which is suicide. And I also think that many political parties, whatever it's Republican or Democrats, they understand this fact, and that's why they don't even bring it up. Because if we bring up this data in our society today, right, many young people will not be dying from suicide as they are, because we will put resources and funds behind, finding ways to support young people that are struggling with their mental health. Right. I also want to say this. I think a lot of times we think that if we talk about suicide, right, it's going to push people to want to commit suicide. Actually, that is the opposite, right? Study have shown that the more we are able to talk about suicide, more people feel comfortable expressing how they feel, and then they can get the support, right? So I don't want to make this, I guess I could say for every parent out there, right? Speak to your children about their mental health, right? Understand where they are emotionally, because they're the ones that are committing suicide at a high rate, especially young men, which we're going to talk about a statistics coming up as well on that. In 2022, suicide was the second leading cause of death for people ages 10 to 14, 20 to 34, and the third leading cause of death for people ages 15 to 19 years old. So, pretty much when a child is still figuring out who they are, right? Because when you're a teenager, you do not know who you are. When you turn 20, 21, all the way to 25, right? Your brain is still developing. Our brain does not fully develop until we are the age of 25. So, between that space of when you're still figuring out who you are as an individual, as a person, right? But there's so much pressure from society, and that's the age that many people commit suicide, right? Because when we look at the statistics here, from 10 years old to 14 years old, from 20 years old to 34 years old, and from 15 years old to 19 years old, those are the highest time where people commit suicide. So parents, caregivers, school educational people, right, therapists, this is a conversation that needs to be at the forefront of every center, of every maybe home, right, in our education system. We need to be talking to these kids because that is where they spend most of the time, especially at school, right? Children spend at least 8 hours a day or plus at school, and they are committing suicide at a significant rate, right? And when we are looking at data here, girls are more likely to attempt suicide than boys. However, boys die by suicide 3 times more than girls do. I believe statistics says girls attempt suicide at least four or so plus times, right? But guys, when they commit suicide, it's usually just very aggressive and they go for it. The one thing that many people use to commit suicide in our society today is handguns, right? I know a lot of people, especially in America, I might get a little bit of backlash for this conversation right now, but I know a lot of people say, they want their gun rights, right? It's part of their rights. But I truly believe that for an argument perspective, I believe that the reason why they will never pass a gun law, right, to abolish guns in our society is because they understand the damage that it does in our communities, right? Because when you look at handguns, many people are using it to commit suicide, right? That is the number one thing people use to commit suicide. And then not only that, many people use those same guns to commit homicides. So why would this manufacturing companies that understand the use of which it has in our society, right? Which we in our community, we take those handguns and we either hurt ourselves or hurt other people, right? Why would they take that away from us when they want the society to continue to stay in chaos, when they want the society to continue to suffer, to continue to grieve, right? I know many people think, oh, it's my First Amendment right. I should have a handgun. But when you look at what those guns are doing into the society, you question, right? America is one of the places that citizens use guns to violently, right, kill each other. I guess what my point is like, do you really need a handgun? Right? I understand sometimes people, need to protect themselves. But when you look at it, how many times do we need to protect ourselves versus how many times are young people using those handguns to actually commit, suicide with? And I recently saw a post of a little girl that allegedly like shot her mother with a handgun, right? Several times, and when I saw that, I was devastated, right? Because I believe this young girl was 15 years old. And, when you look at the mental health statistics, right, what will make a young girl like that kill their own mother, if they're not struggling with their mental health, right? And also what would make a person commit suicide if they are not struggling with their mental health, right? So, you know and depression is the number one cause of why many people commit suicide, right? And when we talk about depression, oftentimes sometimes people say, well, you know it's up to you to like get out of depression, which I do agree to a certain degree, right? However, sometimes there is a chemical imbalance in your mind or in the brain that allows someone to struggle with their depression. But when we look at young people that are dying from suicide, and we see that depression is the number one cause, right? Are they the ones to be blamed, or is society the like? Do we need to look at the society that we are allowing our young people to grow into them? We're going to move into another statistics here. The highest rate of people that are committing suicide are men over the age of 55, right? When this statistics was done in 2015. So men, this is also something that I've noticed being a caregiver working in this industry, right? I noticed that men that are older oftentimes are more depressed than the women that are in the senior care facility, right? Because a lot of times those men don't have people that are reaching out to them, right? They don't have friends, they don't have family members that go over there and visit those men. Oftentimes the women have their kids visit them more than the men do. So men get a lot more depressed as they are in the senior care facility, right? And just a segue here, right? I want to encourage men in our society, right? It's important for you to build a healthy network around you because the older we get, right, the smaller our circle gets. And the smaller our circle gets, that means that the lesser people you have to be able to reach out to when you are getting older. And the highest leading people that are committing suicide are older men, right? Which I found that somewhat interesting that more men are committing suicide as they get older, but also when we look at statistics from younger as well, when they're in the adolescent age and the teen age, also young boys are dying from suicide more than girls are. So it's important that we also support men in our society when it comes down to mental health, because I think that is one thing that we can definitely do more in our society, is to be able to create more programs, create more resources for men, right, in our society, because I personally think that women have a good amount of support when it comes down to that social emotional aspect of the things, when it comes down to mental health. And because of how society was structured and because of the way that we were, I guess, program, right, to relate to society, we often have told men to put their feelings aside or to man up, to toughen up, right? So many men don't really express their emotions as much as they should. Therefore, they don't get the emotional support, or they don't understand their own emotions. So, which is why we see more men, at least in today's society, and also older men, right, committing more suicide as much as they are, because I believe that there's not enough support for them to be able to do so as much as women do. You know, I know in today's society we always talk about how women need equality and women needs right. Not to say women don't, right? But I also do believe that when it comes down to this aspect of things, we need to support men a lot more in our society because they are important just as much as women are, and women are important as well. But if we are to have a healthy society, we need men that are also mentally healthy as well. Because as much as women can be the backbone of our society, the men are also a full force that we need in our society to develop as well. We're going to move on to another statistics here. For every young person who dies by suicide, 100 to 200 attempt suicide as well. So every time someone dies by suicide, 100 to 200 young people are attempting to commit suicide as well. And in the recent years, more people, young people, have died from suicide when you combine all of these diseases together: cancer, heart diseases, HIV and AIDS, which I also want to talk about that in another conversation because, especially if you live in Atlanta, HIV and AIDS has skyrocketed in that environment. And also when you add diabetes as well, right? So when you talk about cancer, heart disease, HIV and AIDS, diabetes, right? When you combine all of those, it still does not amount to the amount of young people that are dying by suicide, and that is a that is a challenge that we're facing in our society today. When you look at the statistics again, 17% of high school students considered consider suicide. 17% of high school students. 13 of those high school students that consider suicide have a plan. And 8.4 attempt suicide. And 2.3 of them are rushed to the hospital. You know, that's crazy when you think about it. When I was reading this, I was like, 17% of high school students are thinking about committing suicide. What is going on in the school system? What is going on in the society that many young people want to commit suicide? You know, like, where did we go wrong as a society? Right? Where did we go wrong? And this is something that we're not talking about, right? We are not talking about the fact that young high school kids that are supposed to be having fun, are supposed to be enjoying going to school, right, are thinking about taking their lives, you know. And when we look at another data here, annually, there's 40,000 people that are dying by suicide. 400,000 are rushed to the ER. 2 million and plus plan a suicide or have a suicide plan, and 9 million consider suicide. That's insane. That's a lot of people trying to kill themselves. And suicide is the number one cause for death when it comes down to nurses and medical professionals, right? People that are supporting those that are sick in the hospital or in some type of assisted living facilities are committing suicide at a really significant rate. Many of them have either talked about how painful it is to be able to see the people that they care for, right, and support those people. And because when you work in a hospital or when you work in a senior care facility, right, a lot of people are ill, and sometimes many of the nurses and the people that work there feel guilty for not being able to support those people, so they end up taking their lives. And also there is a lot of stigma that is in that space as well. Those people that work in our medical industry have a lot of stigma because people look at them as they're the ones that are supposed to be helping. So why would they be struggling with their mental health? So many of those nurses end up not talking about the pain that they carry within themselves. So they end up committing suicide as well. Also, when we look at nurses and the rate in which they work in, right? Nurses are overworked and underpaid. So many of them feel that, stress, that financial burden that they have to end up paying nursing school. So they end up committing suicide as well. And we are going to be coming to the end of our conversation here, right? And, for anyone else that is struggling with their mental health, right, please go ahead and get support. you know, it's important that we continue to talk about suicide in our society today. I was recently just told that this month is Suicide Awareness Month, and I do hope that if you are somebody that is planning to commit suicide, right? I hope that you find some people around you that you feel safe to talk to them about this, talk to them about what is motivating you to want to commit suicide, talk about how you feel, express your emotions, right? Because if you bottle those emotions in and you keep the emotions in, the voices in your head only get stronger and stronger. So it is okay for you to express your emotions, and don't be ashamed. Don't feel as if people are going to judge you, right? Don't feel as if, you are not worthy, because you absolutely are. Every single one of us are worthy. Every single one of us have a purpose why we are here on this planet. You are here for a reason, right? So remind yourself that and recognize that you are important and you deserve to be here just as much as anyone else deserve to be here. And one of the things that I hear a lot working in this mental health field is that people feel as if they take their life, if they commit suicide, their friends and family members will be better off without them. That is not correct, right? That is not correct. And not to make you feel bad or make you feel any other way. But if you do take your life in this moment, right, the people around you are going to miss you. Right? The people around you are going to feel your absence, because you mean a lot to them. You do. You are not a burden to them, right? You're not a burden to them, because that's one of the things people that want to commit suicide, they feel as if they're a burden to the people that they love. They feel as if they're not worthy. You're important. You deserve to be here. Every single one of us deserve to be here. No one is more important than another person, right? Your life matter. You matter. There's a reason why you're here on this planet. You have something great inside of you that somebody else is waiting for you to bring to them, right? You have something that will make this world a better place. You have something that can change this world. You are not a burden. You are not worthless. You are beautiful. You're important. You deserve to be here. You deserve to be here, and you have something to offer to this world. You know, it's a magnificent thing that you are here. It is. There is a small percent of chance that you got to be here, right? When you think about it, this world is filled with billions of people. How crazy is it that you got to be here? You know, and when you think about how babies are made, right? It's like one sperm out of maybe, I don't know, six, seven, nine of them gets to actually survive. And that was you, right? That was you. It's a miraculous thing that you're here, right? When you look at the fact that your mom had to carry you for 9 months and then have you here, right? You got to live in this world. It's crazy to think about it, right? You're important. You deserve to be here, you know. I can't emphasize on I don't even know how to even express that anymore apart from the fact that you're worthy and you are here for a reason, right? You're here for a reason. So please do not feel as if you're not, do not. Thank you guys so much again for joining me on this conversation. I hope that this conversation found you in a great light. I hope that this conversation is going to find someone that might need this talk. Again, parents, caregivers, right, administrators, please let's have conversations about suicide with our children. At the rate in which they are taking their own lives, right, there is something that is missing in society. And when we look at the rate many of us are struggling with our mental health, right? We need to have conversations like this, and no, having a conversation about suicide is not going to put the idea in your child's head to commit suicide. It's not. It's the other way, right? It's going to allow them to feel comfortable to talk about it, right? It's going to allow them to know that that is something that people are doing, but they don't have to go down that path, right? Because there is option for them. It's going to allow them to have some type of tools to be able to get the type of support that they need you know. Again, thank you guys so much for joining me on Self Reflection Podcast. I want to ask you, if you have yet to subscribe, please go ahead and hit the subscription button. I would genuinely appreciate it as we are looking to grow our community here on Self Reflection Podcast. Also, leave us a review. Let us know what you think about Self Reflection Podcast. Let us know what you think about this type of podcast as well, where we are talking more about statistics. If you would like to see more content like this, let me know. Also, give me some suggestions on different type of content that you would like to see that is surrounded around mental health. Also, if you have someone that you think will be a great fit for Self Reflection Podcast, please go ahead and share the information with us. We would love to have them on here as well. In this moment, I also want to ask if there are any therapists out there that would love to come on Self Reflection Podcast to talk about the work that they're doing and also have some beneficial information for, our young people out there that are struggling with the mental health. Please reach out to Self Reflection Podcast. We would love to have you guys come and share those information with us. I think that, the more resources that we could put out there into the community, the more that we could talk about mental health and keep it, a space where people feel comfortable to be able to express themselves. I think that the more people are going to feel comfortable, right, expressing themselves as well. I also want to just say some ways that you can prioritize your mental health as you are at home is create some time for journaling, right? Find some time to sit with yourself, whether if it's a minute or 5 minutes or 30 minutes, right? Create some time to journal, write down your thoughts, right? Because when you're able to write down your thoughts, whether if it's you using a pen or if you're using your cell phone, I would recommend using a pen because it's such a powerful tool when you write with pen and paper. But however you choose to let out your thoughts, right? When you are able to let out your thoughts, you're able to get out of your mind, right? And the moment when you're able to get out of your mind and you're able to see your thoughts on paper, it allowed you to see it third person perspective, right? And when you're able to objectify your own thoughts in that way, it allows you the space to be able to process them a little bit better, right? So if you are at home and you are overthinking or you're feeling anxious, depressed, anxiety, right? Get a pen, get a paper, use your cell phone, write down your thoughts. Allow yourself to let those things go, right? Because also when you put down your thoughts on some type of writing or in some type of writing, you're also releasing those thoughts from your mind as well, which allows you to feel a lot more lighter. Another thing that you can do while you're at home taking care of yourself is meditate. Right? Meditation has been one of those things that has definitely allowed me to be able to manage my anger, my anxiety, right? I would say meditation has been one of those things that I have found um more peace in my life by doing meditation, right? And also there is a significant study out there that shows that, I mean, meditation is more powerful than medication at times, right? Because when you're able to meditate, you can get between your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. And when you're able to get into that space in your mind, right, that means you have more control over the thoughts that you let in and out of your mind. And when you're able to control your thoughts in that way, right, you can control your anxiety. You can recognize when those negative thoughts are coming in and out of your mind, because the reality is majority of the times when majority of the times the thoughts that come in our mind, if you are not aware of the thoughts that are coming in your mind, are negative. Study has shown that at least 80 to at least 90% of the things that we think are negative. And at least 95% or 95% of those things, I want to say, are on repeat, right? So you have the same negative thoughts in a circle repeating over and over and over if you have yet to master the way that the mind works, right? So practice meditation. It's going to allow you to break away from that negative mind. And the beautiful thing about practicing meditation is that it brings you more into the present moment, right? Because when you're in the present and you live in that moment, right, there's less anxiousness, there's less anxiety, there's less depression. Because oftentimes when you look at the mind, right, where does it go? It either goes in the past or either goes in the future, right? And many people that commit suicide, right, or many people that struggle with the mental health is because they're either living in the past or they're living in the future, right? So when you're able to meditate, you're able to interject those thoughts when you're meditating and when you're not meditating, because the more you practice meditation, right, the more you have control over your mind. And the more you have control over your mind, the more you can cultivate different type of thoughts, right? The more you can now start to say, hey, I recognize myself, repeating the same negative patterns over and over and over. So when you're able to catch yourself in that space, even when you are not meditating, right, when you're able to catch yourself in that space, now you can interject the thought, and that's where you can replace the negative self-talk. And that's why they call this thing called programming, right? That's how you get to program your mind. When you catch yourself doing a negative thought and you interject it and you put a positive one, the more positive thoughts you can put in your mind, right, the more positive you're going to be. Think of your mind like this. Your mind is like a deck of cards, right? The more you stack cards on the deck, the taller it gets, right? And the more cards you stack, the taller it gets. So when the more positive things that you could stack on the cards, like the more positive things that your mind gets to repeat, right? So what I've noticed for myself is that the days that I somewhat skip meditation, right? The days that I don't meditate in the morning, I often find myself like getting a little bit upset throughout the day, a lot more easier. Like someone could say something and it would trigger me a lot more than the days that I don't meditate, right? And also, another beautiful thing about meditation is that it allows you to catch yourself when you get triggered, or it allows you to recognize your triggers, because we are all like walking depression in a way. And I'm going to say that very lightly because every single one of us have trauma, right? Whether if it's intense trauma, right? Because we all had some type of adverse childhood trauma, right? So as we get older, you begin to recognize your triggers when you meditate, because when you meditate, you recognize like, okay, it oftentimes depending as well if you, okay, let me say this, if your meditation is intentional, right? Let's say you get into meditation and you say, um today in my meditation I want to work on my inner child, right? And you get into that meditation space, you ask yourself, what about your inner child do you want to work on, right? Let's say you come from a family that used to you know, like whoop your butt, right? And that is a trigger for you, right? So you you get into that meditation space and you recognize that every time someone like beats on a child, or every time you see someone fighting, right, it triggers you. So once you're meditating, right, you pay attention to that thought, right? Not to say that you want to hold on to that thought, right? You let the thought come in and out, but you want to be able to pay attention, because once you recognize like, okay, the reason why I get triggered when someone is in a physical altercation, right? When I see someone fighting or I see a child getting hit, the reason why it makes me upset is because I used to get hit, right? So when you get to that space, now you can start to reprogram and reframe that whole like situation for yourself, because now you know why you get upset when people do certain things. For example, as well, if you are someone that grew up in a family that used to get like aggressive and loud and people used to fight all the time, right? And you know, get in a relationship, right? And that becomes a pattern with your partner, right? You have to, now you have to go back into like your childhood, right? And recognize that. And meditation is one of those spaces that would allow you to get into that space as well, to break away from that negative pattern that happened in early childhood, right? Maybe that's another conversation that we can have on another day. But to bring this all together is that, you know, I guess we were talking about ways on how to support yourself mentally, right? So I kind of went on a tangent there. But another way to support yourself is by meditation, right? Another way to support yourself when it comes down to your mental health is physical exercise, right? You want to exercise as much as possible. Exercise has also been shown, proven by science, that when you exercise, your body releases these hormones that are called hope hormones, right? And hope hormones allows are just as powerful as any other medication, if not even better than you taking antidepressants, right? Because those are natural hormones that are your body is releasing, which is what our body does, right? Our body has a natural pharmacy within ourselves that can heal us. And exercise is one of those ways that you can activate those medications for yourself as well. And also, the last thing I'll talk about is getting a supportive community, right? Having supportive people around you, having people that uplift you, that are positive, right? Being around people that sees you, sees your worth, and uplift you and motivate you, right? Because when you're around people that are motivating and positive, right? That's the energy that they're going to project onto you. And the more positive energy that you surround yourself around, the more positive you're going to be. So, those are some ways that you can support yourself if you are struggling with your mental health. Like I said, again, if you are feeling suicidal, right, talk to someone, get some help, and, and know that you belong here. Thank you guys again so much for joining me on Self Reflection Podcast. I hope that you guys have a phenomenal day. Take care of yourself, love yourself, be kind, and be gentle with yourself. Until next time, you're listening to Self Reflection Podcast, and this is your girl, Lira. Ta da!